Also in our near future, of course, is an election, and it's just about a month away. And the 63rd House District is going to be a race between four different people. And one of them is with us right now. He's Libertarian Ronald Hawkins. Ronald, good morning. It's nice to see you today.
Good morning, Tim.
Welcome to the program. You are running against Republican Matt Hall, who defeated Republican Dave Maturin for the Republican nomination back in August, Democrat Jennifer Aniano, and Green Party candidate John LaPietra. So there's four of you in this race.
Yes, there is.
Y'all got together last night, right?
Yes, in Marshall.
Yeah, so over in Marshall, it was like a candidate forum?
It was a candidate forum, and the Marshall Development Authority there put on.
Oh, great. So how long did that last?
It went from, I believe it was 6 to about 8:30. They had a lot of candidates, local candidates, and it was very good.
So it wasn't just the 63rd House race?
No, it had school board and everything.
Oh, okay.
Mayor, trustees. It introduced the people to the public.
Give us an idea of your background. I mean, you're not a career politician by any means.
No, and I'm not a lawyer, so.
Not a lawyer, not a politician. So what have you been doing with your life up until now?
Well, I went into the Air Force back in 1969 and spent a little under 5 years there. I had to get out because my father's had his neck broken in a car accident, and I had to take care of his business until he recovered. And then we couldn't expand the business because of the OPEC oil embargo. He was a bulk fuel salesman, delivery. And so at that point, jobs were a little bit hard to find. I went down to, I lived in Indiana. It was went down to the state employment, and I could have been a beer delivery driver or a cigarette salesman. That didn't sound too attractive, but fortunately they had what they called the Veterans Reemployment Act, and they sent me out to Fort Harrison. And I went to work for the Army as a Department of the Army civilian, and did that for a few years. Worked in a warehouse, operated a forklift. Similar to what I did in the Air Force, I was in inventory management supply in the Air Force. Then that kind of got boring, and the opportunity came to go overseas with Bell Helicopter, and I went to Iran.
Wow. What year was this?
Let me think. Now I got to think.
Was the Shah still in power?
Yeah, the Shah was still there.
Shah of Iran was still in power.
I think it was if my memory serves me right, it was 70, I want to say 6 or 78. I'd have to go back and look. I'm getting old. Dates kind of slip here and there, but
sure.
I left about a month before the show. You know, it's a dumb farm boy from Indiana sees rioting in the streets in the city where I was in, where it was one of the oil. It was where they had their big petrochemical oil refinery, and it was a very interesting experience. I had the passport locked up by the Iranian secret police. We had a Sabak agent assigned to us, so they locked up our passports. We couldn't really leave unless they let us. But where we worked, we had a compound, and we would go out to it. It was on a Iranian Army aviation base, which was on the south side of the road, and then on the north side of the road was a big petrochemical complex, which the Russians were there as technicians. So it was a very interesting experience to be there. And when I left, I finally got a flight out after 3 days in Tehran, and we ended up coming back to the States. And eventually, after a couple of months, I went to back down to Fort Harrison, and they sent me over to the Property Disposal Office, which fell under the Defense Logistics Agency, which is why I'm in Battle Creek.
Ah, so you've been here in Battle Creek at the Federal Center for quite some time, and retired from there?
Actually, I spent a lot of time overseas. And I ended up here because this is where the headquarters is at for property disposal. Sure. I came here I moved to Battle Creek, I believe it was 1992 originally.
Well, so you know the community pretty well, the area pretty well.
Fairly well.
And you know the roads pretty well. I think it's interesting. Your website, Ronald Hawkins, fixtheroads.com. So I'm guessing that's a big issue with you, the roads, and probably good old Public Act 51.
Right.
That's how we fund our roads. That's how we funded our roads since, I'm going to say 51.
Yeah.
Just a coincidence there, but that is, so you think we need to do something there?
Yes, I do. I think when a law is 1 year younger than me, that it's been amended so many times. The only people that really understand it now are the bureaucrats and the lobbyists. I think we need to rescind the thing in its entirety and just start over.
And when we start over, what sort of things are you going to aim for? I mean, how do we fund roads equitably in this state?
I think we need to figure out a per mile funding and turn it over to each county and let them handle it. I'm a person that believes in simple things, and that to me is the most simplest formula you can use.
So you look at how many miles of road are in each county, and you give X amount of dollars per mile, and you allocate that accordingly, yes, and let the counties take care of prioritize it.
Right. And then the state roads, the state gets a certain amount of funding, and you have the federal dollars coming in too. So it's a little bit of a mix, but the way it is now, it's way too complicated.
Sure. You also have a thing you're calling drop the cap.
Yes.
Now, what do you mean drop the cap?
The Hadley Amendment, and I speak to this, Mr. Bill Jeleno, our candidate for governor, this is an issue that he brought to bear. And the Hadley Amendment caps how much the state can tax. Right now we're below that, and all he's recommending is we just lower the percentage of the cap, which means your taxes aren't going to get elevated in the future. Unless there's an emergency, there's a mechanism to do that. But we need to lower that because, quite honestly, I think Michigan's government has enough money. It's just poorly allocated. It's to me, when you have a gas tax and 30% of it goes to the roads and over 30% of it goes to the schools, it's just the way they do things is so mixed up that it just does not make common sense. You know, if you're going to have a funding stream for roads, have a funding stream for roads. If you're going to have a funding stream for schools, have a funding stream for schools. Make it clear, make it transparent, make it so people can understand what's going on.
Sounds kind of simple.
Well, that's me. I grew up on a farm, and to me, it should be common sense. Just you don't need to do that.
Is that what has attracted you to the Libertarian Party? Just this idea of common sense?
That and the fact that I've spent a lot of my time around the world and see what our foreign policy does and see the way we do things and see the side of the government that most citizens don't see. And I've always believed Ron Paul had the correct vision for the country, and he was marginalized when he tried to run for president, which was a shame. I think he would have made a decent person to have there. That's why, to me, I tell people when I go out and talk to them, my father and his father and mother were Democrats. My mother and her father and mother were Republicans. My grandfather on my mother's side was a school teacher. My father's father was a farmer. He didn't own the farm. He was a tenant farmer. And the thing that he appreciated was the fact that Roosevelt extended Social Security to the farmers. They didn't have any pension plan back then. Well, that's what I look at, and I think today, if my father was alive or my grandparents were alive, they'd look at these two parties and go, what are we looking at? It makes no sense. So to me, if you look at the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian values, you're going to see that you're probably a Libertarian, you just don't know it. And the Libertarians are the most centered party of all of them now. And in 2018, in Michigan, we have an opportunity to make history because this year, the Libertarians are a major party, equivalent to the Democrats and Republicans, with the exception that the governor on the Democrat side and the Republican side got over $1.2 million dumped in their campaign.
Yeah.
The Libertarians got zero.
Zero. So the money from the taxpayers went to the two major parties, but at least the Libertarians got enough in the last election to at least appear on the ballot.
Yes.
So making some inroads there. We are talking with Ronald Hawkins. He is the Libertarian candidate for the 63rd House District. Dave Maturin is the current 63rd House representative, and he will not be heading back as Matt Hall defeated him in the Republican primary. So it'll be Matt Hall as the Republican, Democrat Jennifer Aniano, Green Party candidate John LaPietra, and Mr. Ronald Hawkins as the Libertarian candidate. One of the, you've got a nifty little 3-minute video out that talks about 5 top issues that you have and some thoughts on that. Gives you a nice snapshot of what you're looking at. And there was one issue in there that really hadn't popped on my radar much, and that's probate court reform.
Yes. I was, actually, how I began this, just a little bit of background. I thought I'd want to run for the 3rd District United States Congress. After 41 years in the federal government, I kind of understand that system very well. But I failed to get enough signatures, so I didn't get on the ballot for that. And Mr. Gelano, our gubernatorial candidate, asked me to consider running for the state representative so we could field a good ticket in the Libertarian Party. Because if you elect a governor and you don't elect any legislators,
sure,
how are you going to get your agenda done? And I will tell everybody, if you get tired of the Democrats and Republican candidates for governor fighting and all the negativity, go to Mr. Gelano's website. It's cometogethermichigan.org. Look at Mr. Gelano. I think you'll find that he's a very logical man. He's a small businessman, and he would make a very, very good governor for this state.
Yeah, we've talked to Bill here on the show, too, and I was quite impressed with him. I think he's very sharp.
Yes. And to websites, I have a website. It's www.ronaldhawkinsfixtheroads.com. I talk about myself, why I'm running, the issues I believe that are important. And I also would tell everybody, go to the other 3 candidates, look at their websites. They have very good websites. I looked at them, and they discuss similar things. And I was in a forum last night with the other 3, and I just tell people, go look at our websites, make an educated decision when you vote on November the 6th, and pick the candidate you find that makes the most sense to you. I will say that I agree with the Democratic opponent. Forget about the parties. Look at the person. Make this election about the individual that you think is going to best represent you. I'd be proud and honored to serve and represent the citizens of the 63rd District. Now, to probate court reform, this is an issue that I did not know about, and when I was out trying to get signatures to run for Congress, there was a protest in Penfield, and I stopped and talked to those folks, and it shocked me. This is a national issue, and to sum it up, they trap the elderly in a system where they appoint a lawyer, a conservator, a guardian, and it's almost impossible for them to get out of it, and they just deplete their assets. And it's one of my friends in the party said, well, that's because of Medicare. No, it's not really because of Medicare. It's because it's a system that they get people in. I was in a hearing last Thursday in Ann Arbor. The lady wrote a letter. She's 92 years old. She'd had an aneurysm. She's recovered. She's at home. She had 2 homes. One was a rental. Well, that's been sold out from under her. Now they were in the process of trying to sell the house that she actually lives in. Luckily, there were enough people there that the conservator backed off on that. They withdrew that request to the judge. But the lady had written a letter to the judge saying she wanted to drop this lawyer she had, and the judge refused to do it. The judge just ignored it. The lady went through the list of all the money they had spent that she didn't agree with. The judge just ignored it. And then what really amazed me, the judge called everybody up to her, and they had a little conference, but because of the people that was in the courtroom. She flipped on white noise for 5 minutes so you couldn't hear what was going on. And at that was at the point they withdrew the conservators' motion to sell her house. So this is just one example. Another gentleman, he was put in a nursing home. He had an apartment. He wanted to go back to it. She wouldn't allow him. And it's just, I didn't realize it, and now that I've looked into it, it's very bad. And one thing I did explain to some of the activists that were there, the Michigan Constitution is very clear. If 2/3 of the legislators and the governor decide to remove a judge, they don't have to impeach him. They can remove him just based on, and write out the cause of why they removed him. So when I see things like that, I think our legislatures are failing to have a little bit of ownership to the process, because you've got three branches. You got the governor, you got the legislators, and you've got the judicial. And you can't just let one branch run wild. You have to have all three to balance it out.
Talking with Ronald Hawkins, Libertarian candidate, 63rd House seat, and we're just about out of time. Along with that, though, you also talk about income tax reform for the elderly.
Yes.
What's your idea there?
I think when you turn 80 years old, and the state of Michigan needs to just not bother you about income tax, period. Unless you make $500,000 or more a year. And I don't think there's very many elderly that make that.
Not too many.
No.
Yeah. And a couple of other little things. No-fault insurance. You think it's time to say goodbye to that?
I do. I think it's time just to be done with it. Our rates are ridiculous.
Yeah. In fact, you've got 3 cars and you're paying...
I paid $1,200 for 6 months of insurance. My son paid $200 for the whole year in Indiana. Now, does that make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So
let's
definitely
go.
a priority there.
Yeah.
Ronald Hawkins, fixtheroads.com. That's the website if you want to find out some more. We'll also have this video posted here before the election in the next week or so, and you can check that out. Ronald, thanks for stopping by.
Well,
nice to
thank
talk
you for
to you
having me.
today.